The story is currently breaking, and developments are still coming in, but news broke the other day that a Democrat judge in New Mexico was harboring a terrorist TdA member. Now, his home has been raided. He was detained. The initial reports were that he was arrested, but it now appears that he was only detained. He was released, but his wife has been arrested and is in ICE custody. I don't know what that means. I mean, is his wife an illegal immigrant? What's going on? And, well, the question then becomes, why are Democrats so hell-bent on defending cartel members, narco gangs, and illegal immigrants in general? And I think it's fair to say, because this is them, their family members, the people they work with, and in some instances, it appears to be members of terrorist organizations. And I say that not lightly, because I'm not a fan of the terrorists are going to get you thing, but we're talking about criminal gangs that murder politicians who defy their interests. And so this is political. When you try to run for office against them, they kill you. This is terrorism, and that's why the president has ruled as such. So this story is currently breaking right now. It is absolutely crazy. We're going to go through this, and we do have a bunch more. There's some rumors about Pete Hegseth losing another individual from the DOD, but I got to be honest, I don't know how much I actually believe. We'll get into that, and then some people may not want us to talk about it, but I do. So Larry David wrote this op-ed insulting Bill Maher for meeting with Donald Trump, likening it to him meeting with Hitler. And yeah, Larry David apparently has Trump derangement syndrome, but I do think there's some interesting commentary here now that Bill Maher is losing his mind over this. So we'll get into that. Before we do, my friends, make sure you check out Kalshi.com. That is KALSHI.com. Happy to have them as a sponsor for tonight's show. You will get $10 credit when you trade $100 on Kalshi at Kalshi.com/10. We like to use Kalshi. It's a prediction market. You can go and basically buy event predictions. So in this instance, we got this one pulled up because this is big news of the Canadian election. You can see that the Liberal Party has an 85% chance to win versus Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party at 15%. He's been dropping dramatically, and a lot of people are bummed on that. But this is something we call the wisdom of the crowds. That is, when enough people come together and then make a prediction, you actually see a tendency towards it being correct. Not always, but maybe it could be 60%, 70%. In this instance, Kalshi's been pretty spot on in these prediction markets. You may have noticed during the election when we were using Kalshi to track the predictions because, well, first of all, I'd say people who know stuff put their money where their mouth is. So if someone's got an inside baseball on this, they're going to be betting on it, try and win money. But simply, most people have a general idea of where things are going based on how they're going to vote, how others are going to vote. So you can check out Kalshi.com. They got a bunch of other stuff. And of course, when they're showing the Liberal Party to win, actually, that's where the news is trending. They say it's Carney's to lose in the Canadian election. So we will see. But shout out to Kalshi. Once again, Kalshi.com/10. Thanks for sponsoring the show. Don't forget to also head over to castbrew.com and pick up some delicious Cast Brew coffee. Sold out of Rise with Roberto Jr., but Appalachian Nights, Stand Your Grounds, still available. And check this out. Interestingly, our whole bean Colombian has been popping up. People have been buying a lot more of that just single origin. But if you check out our ground coffee, we've got a bunch of different options. We got Focus with Mr. Bocus. We've got Luck of the Seamus. But if you like decaf, we've got Sleepy Joe, which the joke doesn't really work anymore because Trump won, but I'm sure he's still sleepy. And, of course, Unwoke. Don't forget to also smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is George Papadopoulos.
Thanks for having me.
Who are you? What do you do?
Oh, it's a former Trump and Ben Carson advisor, got caught up in that entire crazy Russia hoax that, we're still dealing with as a country and the world today. Have a show out on YouTube now, Global View. Worked on a lot of political documentaries over the last 6 years in LA, including All the President's Men on TCN, Tucker Carlson Network. So very proud of that. And just surviving and doing my best to help this country turn around.
Right on. Well, should be fun. Thanks for hanging out. Mary's hanging out.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Morgan. You can usually find me on Pop Culture Crisis here at Timcast. Happy to be here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and counter-revolutionary. Let's go.
Here's the news from KTSM. Check this out. New Mexico judge's wife in ICE custody following alleged Tren de Aragua member investigation. So we've got a bunch of different stories on this already. And this story's been evolving. Look at this one from KFox 14. Home of ex-judge raided after claims of hosting Tren de Aragua gang member in Las Cruces. So this is a guy, my understanding, he was a judge and he resigned after they found he was harboring a Tren de Aragua dude. And then we've got this from Wid Lindman that originally reported that he was arrested, detained/arrested. And you can see in this video, check this out. You can see that they got his wife. ICE is arresting his wife. I don't know why. Maybe she's an illegal immigrant or something. And then you can see the judge himself is in cuffs. I think that's what led to most people believing that he was getting arrested. But apparently he has been released. That's the latest update. And they do have his wife in custody. So we don't know much more beyond this. But I will say, actually, I should add to this. Judge Joel Cano is banned from the New Mexico Supreme Court after the alleged Tren de Aragua gang member was arrested in his home. So they're saying alleged. We can see this photo that's gone viral, claiming to be him with this TdA gang member. Yeah, I'm going to say it. If you're wondering why Democrats are so hell-bent on defending MS-13, Tren de Aragua illegal immigrants, I think in some instances, they may be family. I think in some instances, they may be in on the take. And I don't think like Senator Van Hollen is getting paid off or whatever. But I think at the granular level, the reason why we're seeing a New Mexico judge who they've reported is a Democratic judge. He's being detained and his wife being arrested, and they're harboring this guy in their home. That's the allegation. I think along the border especially, and in sanctuary states, what you're going to find is something Trump has been referring to them as homegrown terrorists. These are MS-13 comes into this country. They have kids. Those kids grow up, and they're friends and family members with other people. These older people may then, through either a path of citizenship or otherwise, get positions of power in local government. And when we're dealing with a 20 or 30-year problem, I don't think anyone should be surprised to find that there are TdA, MS-13, and other narco gang affiliated individuals working in the judiciary or in police, or even like there were reports a few years ago, MS-13 was actually in our armed forces because they intentionally enlist to get in and build that influence. So this is kind of freaky. I don't know what you guys think. You think Democrats are in on the take?
I'm not so. I don't know. Have a sense whether they're in on the take, but it does make sense that people in gangs would do what they can to make contacts with people in the judiciary, people in law enforcement.
I just wanted to add that maybe it's more of like an in-law situation, because it sounds to me, based on this detail, that this guy might have been dating the judge's daughter.
Really?
Oh.
I don't know. I'm reading into it too much, but it says, according to a press release from the Justice Department, investigators found social media posts depicting Ortega Lopez posing with multiple guns, some of which were allegedly supplied by April Cano, is that how you say it? The judge's daughter, who allowed him to hold and sometimes shoot various firearms, the agency said, which I would guess belonged to her. And I just don't know why that would ever happen unless they were friends or boyfriend and girlfriend.
Now imagine this.
And living in the guest house as well, together.
You're a judge, and you know what? Like, I don't know, is he like a district judge or like a local judge or something? And your daughter's got a guy who's coming around, and you find out he's TdA or MS-13 or something. You're going to go out and do everything in your power to be like, no, Trump is bad. Don't investigate this for any reason. Please stop, because you're like, uh-oh.
Some biases, obviously.
That's the family connection I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a little lighter. Like his daughter met a TdA guy and she brought him over and he was like, I'm totally okay with this. You know?
Or he could at least claim ignorance after the fact. Or maybe they'd be like, I didn't even know he was like living in the guest house.
Why is
just saw that our electricity bill was going up or something.
Why is the wife getting arrested?
That is weird. So if they were engaging in criminal activity like, as accomplices to the gang member, they would be just arrested by
Regular
their,
police.
Yeah,
If
local
he was,
police.
if she was
not
picked up by
ICE,
there's it would lead you to believe that there is something to do with immigration. You know.
Yo, they're saying it's being reported that this is a tenant of theirs, and they said that the wife of a former judge was taken. And I want to stress the former is like what, a week ago, was taken into custody after federal law enforcement learned their tenant, who was an alleged Tren de Aragua member, was arrested at the judge's home. They say on April 24th, ICE executed a search warrant and probable cause arrest at a residence in the address. Homeland Security Investigation Special Agents, working with federal law enforcement partners, took Nancy Cano into custody as part of an ongoing HSI-led criminal investigation.
So they did that say that the the parents knew that he was allegedly.
No.
If
Well, look-
if that's the case, if that's the case, if he got arrested or whatever, they should have gone. If they were not, complicit or whatever, they would have gone directly to the law enforcement. And said,
It goes on to say, as we previously reported, former Doña Ana County Magistrate Judge Joel Cano rented out his casita to Christian Ortega Lopez at the behest of his wife last year. They met Ortega Lopez when his wife hired him to do housework, according to a criminal complaint. According to court documents obtained by KTSM, the Supreme Court and Third Judicial District Court received his resignation letter March 31st. So this is like a month ago. They say it's unknown if Cano's wife knew of the gang affiliation. I doubt that.
Well, his daughter sure did.
I mean, if they were shooting guns and doing a bunch of stuff, it's not. Well, I want to say it's a guarantee because people are allowed to shoot guns, but that kind of.
Okay, but he's not. He's not allowed to possess or use them.
I mean, he's not allowed to be here.
I'm sure he has a
Yeah.
criminal record too.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that difficult to do a simple background check, considering the guy's a judge and the guy's living and the criminal's living with them.
Do you think they were like under duress, possibly having
Unlikely.
to shelter this guy under threat?
I will tell you this. I do have some sympathy if you are like a local judge and TdA comes to you and says, we're going to hurt your children and your families, you do what we're told. I do sympathize. But then if you decide to help them, you go to prison for that.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like, we watch movies and the kidnapper, he's like, if you go to the police, I'll kill your daughter. And I'm like, you should call the police. Like, what do you think you're going to do by yourself? I don't know to tell you. This judge has zero excuse. Zero.
Absolutely.
Former judge, I guess.
Well,
This Democrat.
I like the way that sounds. Yeah, I mean, I don't see how he hasn't made everything worse for himself, right? Like he definitely, if you're a judge, you definitely have the ability to do a background check, like we were talking about. I'm sure that he has plenty of friends in law enforcement. His wife got picked up for a reason. I don't know for sure that she's here illegally, but I imagine if ICE is picking her up, maybe they're gonna.
She was aiding and abetting.
But even still, that wouldn't be
illegal
immigration.
crossings.
It would still be regular
Right.
law enforcement. The only thing that ICE is for immigration.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe unless they're picking her up for the other cops.
I think people need to consider something when we're seeing this story. That if you're wondering how sanctuary cities operate, it's not like Gavin Newsom sits there and picks up his gavel and then bangs it and says, no more arresting illegal immigrants. It's that when you let in, I think at this point, the estimates are upwards of 40 million illegal immigrants. Because I'm not talking about in the past 4 years, I'm talking about of all time. They are going to have family and friends in positions of power, and that is root corruption. And then you're going to have a cop or a judge, and they're going to have friends and they're going to have family members. And so when they come across the illegal immigrant and they're like, hey, I'm from this place, don't arrest me, the guy goes, you got it, buddy. Stay safe out there. This is the destruction of American community. We talked about this with Reagan's amnesty back in, I think it was like the 80s or whatever. You had a bunch of people who came to this country illegally. Reagan gave them an amnesty. And then when they had children, those kids were presented with a proposition to strip public funds from illegal immigrants. They wouldn't be able to receive public benefits. This was the last time, I forgot what year it was, but this is the last time that California voted Republican. Because all of these children of illegal immigrants said, okay, then we vote Democrat because we want public funding for illegal immigrants. And then California's been blue ever since.
It's kind of the same thing with the Dreamers, too. I think that's why that's such a hot topic and why it's such a sensitive topic and why the Democrats are so invested in that vis-a-vis the Republicans.
It's their investment.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine just actually sent me a message and said that sometimes there are customs violations that ICE will pick people up for. Now, I'm not sure what kind of violation she might have had. He's a former law enforcement as well.
Okay.
But yeah,
I kind of think they arrested her because she was harboring a illegal immigrant at the minimum and a Tren de Aragua member at the worst.
Yeah, but I've
Actually, not at the worst. The worst could be that she's in TdA as well, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the
That
thing
just
that I'm
seems like if that were the case, then the police would arrest her. So that's quite strange. I just want to kind of vent about something. Earlier today, I saw
complain about your Taco Bell.
a tweet from the White House account on X, and it was about Abrego Garcia, actually, not this situation. And it was this like AI generated 4-panel cartoon, and the caption was like, "Cross illegally and join a gang, get deported." and end of story. And I just don't understand why it needs to get to that point where someone is committing monstrous crimes other than illegally crossing for us to justify deporting them. Why does it need to be you're literally MS-13 for us to feel okay about deporting you?
Just send them all home.
Why is the bar so low? I feel like our expectations are being set so low for what they're capable of doing. And we were promised and we mandated mass deportations, not deportations of just gang criminals.
Well, if you look at when I watch Fox and Friends in the morning, I wake up, I'm making waffles for the wife and the baby, and then I put on Fox and Friends. There's these commercials with Kristi Noem where she's like, leave now or else. And, the real thing is they say is you can leave now and then reapply to come back legally. And you can, but if you get caught here, then you're banned for life.
Yeah, I feel like that's also pretty low bar. Like, leave and then come back. I don't want them to come back.
I kind of don't think they
our
will.
Laws.
Like my attitude is, the Trump administration is like, if you leave now, we promise you'll come back, and then as soon as you walk out, they just close the door and lock it.
Is that the plan?
I mean,
do I need to trust it? Is that the plan that I need?
Well,
to
you
trust?
wouldn't trust it anyway.
I wouldn't trust it anyway, but.
To be honest, you look at David Hogg in the DNC, and he said, we're going to put $20 million into primarying old incumbents who need to get out of the way. You should retire now before we come after you. And what happened? Dick Durbin says, I quit. It's the smart thing to do to say, it's like this leave and then you can maybe come back later. It probably gets rid of the largest amount of illegal immigrants because they fear getting banned for life.
I don't know. Call me naive, but I just thought mass deportations meant interior removals.
Who does it?
Millions.
Who?
And that's not really
Who does it?
happening.
Who does it?
I think that's what all the ICE, symbolics was with Dr. Phil, with Kristi Noem, going on those hunts in the city of Chicago and other big cities around the country. I think that's kind of what that was about.
Yeah, here's the reality. Mass physical removal is impossible.
You're talking millions of people. So
it's
Why would it be promised then?
Get your
well,
vote.
because they didn't promise you that. You just think they did.
Well, yeah, that actually is true, because if you read between the lines or you listened between the lines, they were always saying, we're focusing on the criminals.
Indeed.
Even though they're all criminals, but the violent criminals.
They also did say, and are saying today, self-deportation will be the most effective means of removal.
And I mean, that may be true. But they have to apply pressure to the people that are hiring illegals.
How do we even track those results?
Which ones?
The
Self-deportation?
self-deportations. It seems like something you can't even quantify by the end of this administration.
I got to be honest, I think it might be impossible.
Yeah.
Especially, look, here's what we're looking at right now. The Trump administration's got, a year before squishy Republicans start crying because the children of illegal immigrants are demanding they defend illegal immigrants. And I mean, with all due respect, we've had members of Timcast call in and say, like, a family member's an illegal immigrant, they're getting deported. What do I do? And I say, you can go home. Like, you can bring your family home. This is what we've been talking about. You don't get to break our laws and take from the American people. It's just not a reality. But you got a year. At the same time, judges are issuing, rogue judges are issuing unconstitutional orders. You've got the media lying about due process. The new narrative that they're pushing is that Trump wants to strip trials away from illegal immigrants. This may shock you. Illegal immigrants never received trials. There is no trial due process for illegal immigrants. Never existed. And so they're lying because they're trying to stop Trump from being able to deport. A rogue judge will then enforce that. And then Trump deports what? Maybe a couple 100,000 before he's out of office?
Just for clarity, the narrative that they're pushing about due process, they're conflating illegals with people that are here looking for asylum. Asylees get a hearing about their asylum claims. Illegals just get sent out. But the Democrats are perfectly comfortable conflating those two things so that way the American public is confused.
Technically correct, but that's under Biden when he changed the rules. The actual rules, if you go to the immigration website, and as they've always been, is if you enter the country illegally outside of a port of entry, then you are subject to expedited removal.
Yeah.
What Joe Biden changed was he said, no, not if they say asylum. They made that app where people would go and before they came, they'd fill out the app, illegally enter the country, and then say, nope, I'm an asylum seeker. And then they'd get shuffled off to some registration center or something. And they'd say, okay, we'll give you a court date for your asylum. Then as soon as you left, they'd throw it in the garbage and say, never come back. So they were creating de facto permanent residence for these people. That's illegal. That's unconstitutional. That is criminal. Now under the Trump administration, they're going back to expedited removal. That's why we're seeing the border locked down. It's going to be tough. Let me jump to this story right here. We have this from ABC News. This is from the other day. Trump says can't have a trial for all migrants he wants to deport.
Yeah.
Such a thing is not possible to do, he posted on social media. They say amid a tense legal battle over deportations, Trump is now arguing undocumented migrants should not be given a trial where they could challenge being removed from the country. You know, they don't actually get that. Let me pull up the deportation.
It's okay that it's not possible because the American people don't want them to have a trial anyways. They just want them out. So
this is what the process is, okay? What happens when someone is detained by immigration? They say after a non-citizen is detained, they may go before a judge in immigration court during the deportation. Oh, wait, but there is a judge? Hold on. In some cases, a non-citizen is subject to expedited removal without being able to attend a hearing in immigration court. Expedited removal may happen when a citizen comes to the U.S. without proper travel documents, uses forged travel documents, does not comply with their visas. What does this mean? Everybody we saw under the Biden administration who entered with fake documents or with none were subject to expedited removal. But that was unprecedented that Biden was doing this. Immigration court hearings and rulings are for people who overstay their visa or violate the terms of their immigration. And then they get an order for removal and then they challenge it. But when you enter the country illegally, it was just expedited removal. They called Obama the deporter in chief because he was just loading them up and flying them out.
And lock them in cages too.
He built them all.
Yeah, and they blame Trump on that too. That was pretty incredible stuff.
So it's all lies. And even last night, Ian fell for it. I'm sure the audience is saying, we're not surprised Ian fell for the lies. Mary's giving me a look right now where she almost can't believe it. But I don't mean this disrespectfully. Ian brought up, Trump said we can't have trials for illegal immigrants now, and I had to correct him. That narrative pushed by the press is fabricated. What Trump is actually saying is, let me give you the full context of what Trump is saying. Illegal immigrants, the people who come here and cross the border illegally, are subject to expedited removal and do not get hearings. We can't start to have trials for all these people now. There's too many. It makes no sense. You remove the other context, trick people into thinking they always did receive a trial and that Trump is trying to strip their rights from them.
Yeah.
Factual, but not truthful.
And the goal is to deceive the American people, which is not something new. It's something that the Democrats have been engaging in, regularly for the better part of the past 10 years, whether it be, the policies during COVID, the very fine people hoax, the Maryland man, whatever it is. There's been multiple attempts by the Democrats to totally deceive the American people, and I think generally, pardon me,
it works like 99% of the time.
It has worked well, yeah, because most people aren't very politically engaged. But if you're even marginally politically engaged, I think that unless your personality is kind of geared towards being a Democrat, if you're actually willing to change your opinion based on what you see, I think that most people that do any kind of exploration of the truth, they see that the Democrats are full of crap.
Very teeny tiny fraction of the population.
It is a very teeny tiny fraction of the
with,
population of people that actually are into politics.
People just believe whatever is most emotionally resonant
100%.
to them.
100%.
But reeling it back, I might sound crazy for saying this, but I feel like not only would there be a popular demand for an immigration moratorium, but also just a moratorium on asylum claims. I know they're given court dates for asylum claims, but how about a moratorium on that?
I think that would actually be something the American people.
So many of them are BS anyway.
Well, hold on, Mary. I think
they're all fabricating them.
I didn't realize you were a liberal, going so soft on these people. I say when they come in and claim asylum, we arrest them and criminally charge them, and then send them to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
I'm not serious, by the way. I'm just trying to sound like I'm more aggressive than Mary's being.
Am I being aggressive?
No, I was kidding.
Okay.
I think a moratorium, I completely agree with the moratorium. I think we need to shut down all asylum claims until we can figure what the hell's going on.
Well, look, I think the American people agree with this. That's why the Democrats are at like a historic disapproval rating right now. They're trying to normalize these type of issues as if they're popular, and for that the American people are supporting them. They don't. That's why they lost this past election. That's why they're likely going to lose this midterm if things continue this way. And this just, I mean, this is a complete nonsense.
Democrats' strongest man is David Hogg.
And he exemplifies the civil war that's going on in the Democrat Party right now. If you look
They're
at
threatening to kick him out.
they're probably going to. If you look
They
at
said they're going to kick him out.
Excommunicate him as a Democrat?
excommunicado,
He's vice chair, so they're saying we're going to remove you.
Yeah.
because he is actually
Such a plan. He's an actual crisis actor.
Yeah, he is. He's trying to primary Democrats, and the DNC official is not in the business of primarying Democrats. They're not in the business of picking and choosing which Democrat. They're in the business of making sure Democrats win. Now, primarying existing seats that are safe seats is a bad move for Democrats to do. David Hogg's doing that.
I disagree.
And Carville was all over him.
No, it's a good thing for them to do. David Hogg is correct, except he's wrong about literally everything else. Charlie Kirk is talking about primarying safe red seats to get rid of the rhinos in the party who are against the popular mandate. David Hogg has a similar idea. The only problem is his ideas aren't popular at all. He's on the back end of a 80-20 issue, arguing for getting rid of safe blue Democrats who are on the moderate
correct
side.
Yeah.
So this is the fascinating thing. David, imagine if there was a prominent rhino who hated Trump and he was arguing we're going to primary safe Republicans. That's basically what David Hogg is doing. He's in favor of all the worst issues. The ones, I got to be honest, I think David Hogg might be a Republican. I think one day he was at church and he was wearing his Trump hat and his Trump shirt and watching a video of Trump on his phone. And then he said, someone needs to destroy the Democrats from within. And then, one of his buddies looked at him and said, but David, they'll hate you. And he says, they will, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And so then he joined the Democratic Party, and he's just ripping them to shreds from within and making them look like morons.
Good for him.
Good for him.
I feel like it's more likely he was just like groomed from birth by like the FBI or the CIA.
Well, his dad, I think, was FBI, right?
Yeah.
Was really?
Yeah, I'm
That's
pretty
true.
sure.
I remembered the name of the girl from Parkland, Emma Gonzalez, who started going by X Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And they both just started careers in activism, and it went beyond gun control activism.
Yeah. His dad's a retired FBI agent.
That's crazy work. Like, it's so in your face.
Well, I mean...
That's my personal opinion, okay? My personal
No,
opinion.
I get it, but I'm just saying you don't need a grand...
Something is not what it seems about
You don't need a grand conspiracy. His dad was an FBI agent, Democrat, and he takes after his dad, and it's not like... I don't view it as the FBI had a meeting 20 years ago and they said, you must have a child of prophecy to lead the deep state. They probably had a kid, and then he was like, here's what I think you should do, and his kid takes after him. Yeah.
Much to think about.
Indeed.
You should ask Alex Jones what he thinks about this.
I do think this is we'll throw this one in just a little bit. Post Millennial says that Venezuela is likely weaponizing Tren de Aragua against us. So when Trump is talking about needing to get these people out as quickly as possible, he is not wrong. And the sentiment that's going around quite a bit is actually the math is simple. If you allow 20 million people in unvetted, but then you can't remove them without vetting, you've lost. It's over.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Because that means it's a one-way valve, and they're not going to stop coming in.
And I think people have misunderestimated that terrorist organizations are not simply in the Middle East and far off places in Southeast Asia, but they're actually in Latin America. And this is a terrorist organization that these people are members of that have infiltrated the United States.
Yeah, and I think it's important to stress this.
Yeah.
Trump is not arbitrarily declaring these narco gangs and prison gangs terrorists for no reason. He's not calling them terrorists just so he can try and deport them. These organizations, these gangs are known for killing politicians. The definition of terrorist is when you use violence for political ends. Right. When you get these Mexican mayors and governors and people are like, Tim, those are the cartels. Yo, read up on what MS-13 does down there. If you come out and you say, we're going to clean up the streets and get rid of crime and stop what they're doing, the next day you're dead. So if these people want to operate here and they want to act in these ways, then they're terrorists. So
I wonder what kind of reaction the American people would have if there was actually even just one politician murdered, blatantly murdered by a gang, right? Because in Mexico they don't hide it; they'll cut a politician's head off and leave it on their car. What would the American people do if that happened in the United States? At
this rate, it's more a question of like, what will they do? Because it's like a matter of time as our population is.
I don't
shifting.
I don't know if it's actually a matter of time or not, but I do think if you saw something like that where it was clearly a gang, a foreign gang that had come to America and behaved like that, I do think the American people would react in a similar fashion to the way that they did after 9/11 and be like, all right, this is not happening here.
We've got to clarify in this story. We have a tweet from Kennecoa the Great, who is confused and says, hold on a minute. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's court document from 2019 says, quote, DHS has not shown there are changed circumstances in Guatemala that would result in the respondent's life not being threatened, or that internal relocation is possible and reasonable under the circumstances. Therefore, the respondent's application for withholding under the act is granted. Anybody knows what's wrong with that quote, with that paragraph, with that sentence?
No. What do you?
You haven't figured it out.
I'm not sure.
And I'm pausing not for dramatic suspense, but to point out that this document has been public since the Kilmar Abrego Garcia story started. I assumed everyone already knew this. Guatemala is the nation under the circumstances of withholding. I thought everybody knew that. And now I'm seeing a bunch of people say, wait a minute. The nation he wasn't supposed to go back to was Guatemala? He's in El Salvador. Yeah. Yes. I thought y'all knew that. I thought I don't know how this one slipped past people. Literally, we have the story from the AP. Who is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man ICE mistakenly deported to El Salvador prison? It's from April 18th. I can't remember which guest we had on. They mentioned a rival gang, I think it's called Barrios 18, was threatening his family in Guatemala, and so they fled. And they're from El Salvador. Yeah, so what is the argument? My assumption and understanding of this was that because the gang that operates in Guatemala and borders El Salvador was threatening his family, returning to El Salvador, he would still be unsafe from the threat in Guatemala. Now people are starting to realize, hey, wait a minute. The withholding order was for Guatemala, not El Salvador, so technically there is no administrative error at all, and there's no need for the AEA. He could have been deported back there in the first place. Now, the issue I have with that argument is, guys, there's no issue with the order of withholding at all because he's in prison. He's safe. It might be funny, but it's true. If the argument is, if you release him to the streets of El Salvador, a gang might kill him, well, we got good news. He's in prison. There's guards there. So there you go. I mean, what's the issue?
Well, kudos to the media for actually using his full name and not the Maryland Man. So,
right.
Because most people know this person by his photo and by Maryland Man. So now we actually kind of know his real name and really what he was all up to.
Do you think this was getting misreported intentionally?
Of course.
What happens is later documents, the federal government said he had a withholding to El Salvador, despite the fact that the court document references only Guatemala.
Like, what is the incentive for them to lie? Or is it just incompetence in the situation?
There's questions about this. And again, the reason why I wanted to go into this story is because a lot of people are just now reading this court document. I would just like to say this as respectful as I can. Guys, you got to read these things. Like I'm talking to you conservatives and the right. I made the mistake. It's my fault. I apologize for this in assuming that the conversations around this understood that Guatemala was the threat. When we had, I can't remember who the guest was, but they mentioned it was a rival gang that was threatening him. That's why they couldn't go back to El Salvador. The argument is, quite literally, for the withholding order, that if they go back to El Salvador, this gang, which operates in Guatemala, will come and get revenge or something. However, Nayib Bukele has cleaned up El Salvador. It is now safe, and the threat of those gangs is minimal because they don't want to go there. They'll get thrown in CCOT. The only real issue, once again, with this case is that he needed a USCIS interview. That's it. One guy from immigration to go, your withholding is due to gangs in El Salvador or Guatemala, I see. Okay, if we send you to El Salvador, where the crime rate is now, it's one of the safest in the Western Hemisphere, you will not face these threats. Withholding void. And then he's deported.
That's it.
End of story. Yeah.
He's also a gang member himself. And we don't want people with targets on their backs in this country if they're just luring the people who are after them to this country, and they're going to hurt other people too.
That's a good point.
And for the sake of argument, let's say that the protection order was pertaining to El Salvador. I don't care. Send him back there.
Prison.
No one is going to lose sleep over this man.
Yeah, I mean, send him anywhere. Send him to prison. Send him to
Guantanamo.
Gitmo. Send him to. It doesn't matter to me where they send him. Send him out of America. Stop making him our problem. Like when Donald Trump says that, they're not sending their best. There are a lot of countries that when they heard that the borders were open, they actually do things like empty their prisons, empty their asylums, say, go, get out of here, and kick them out of their country. And then they wind up here. That is not a fabrication. That actually happens. So the idea that we must accept the criminals of other countries because our Democrats are too spineless to actually send people back, I do not accept that. We need to send all of these people home. We need to do everything we can to put a bunch of pressure on businesses that hire these people, and the police need to wrap up as many illegal immigrants as they possibly can and send them out.
Was mandatory E-Verify even mentioned in the 2024 Trump campaign?
I don't think so.
Because that I remember
recall.
from the 2016 run.
I think they're in favor of it, but there's a lot of libertarians who oppose it. I have an honest question in this regard for you guys. What is the issue with real ID and collection of biometrics? As an honest question, it's not a gotcha. I'm genuinely curious what your thoughts are.
An issue that libertarians have with those?
No, you.
Oh.
Like, what do you think? Is it, let's just start here. So real ID, that basically means all IDs statewide are going to be in a national database. And biometrics, they're going to collect at various ports of entry, your fingerprints, retinal scans, photos, facial ID, whatever. What are your thoughts on doing that? Do you think it's good or bad?
But they already do that when you come in from outside of the United States and when you're using your passport. I think a passport essentially is a real ID. So it's like you're carrying a passport on you. So if you have
chipped.
Yeah. So if you have a passport already, they already have your data.
But already doing it, I don't think is the argument, right? Libertarians are going to complain. They shouldn't be. So my question for you guys is, are you okay with the mass collection of biometrics? No?
No, I mean, that just feels like it has ulterior motives, or maybe they'll discover ulterior motives down the line.
So the argument largely is, the reason they do it at the border is that if your biometrics are in the system and you come to the border and they scan it, be like, gotcha.
But these are basically this data they can use in mass surveillance, and they already do.
But what
facial recognition?
Right. But my question is, why are you worried about mass surveillance?
I don't have a problem with it if they're doing it at the border, at ports of entry. I don't really have a problem with that. Like if you leave the country and they scan your face when you come back, even for American citizens, I don't really have that much of an issue with you or with it. I don't think that it should be done at the airport every time you get on an airplane.
But why not?
Because of things like privacy.
We deserve
issues.
privacy. That's
What does that mean?
You should
okay, guys, let me try it again.
suppose.
You're literally just saying, I don't want them to have it. I get it. I don't either.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the negative thing from them having it is. Like, what do you guys think it is?
So I don't know that there is the ability now to monitor through facial recognition or anything like that, but you do currently have the option of not having electronics on you and going places and doing things and being private, right? So you leave your phone. Now, granted, most people don't make this decision. Most people opt to have the phone because the phone and technology.
Like you don't like if you go to a place that maybe you're going to an adult bookstore, you don't want some NSA guy to know you're doing it.
Fair enough. If that's an example, fine. But the point that I'm
Like
making
you're doing
is,
something embarrassing, you know what I mean?
whether it be embarrassing or you just don't want people to track you, right? So hypothetical, right? you want to go and, well, actually, you can't. You can't. I'm not really sure that there are a whole lot of things that you can do anymore that where there isn't someone tracking.
I ask this because I've come across a lot of people who they'll say, hey, it's really bad that like Real ID is really bad. And I'm like, I agree. I can articulate, my thoughts on Real ID and mass surveillance and biometrics, but I'm genuinely curious if people, like, what is the view the average person has on why they don't want their facial recognition or whatever in a government database? It is like, do you think the government will do something to you by being able to know who you are?
Well, it kind of just sounds like the retort of, like, if you have nothing to hide, you don't need to worry about these encroachments on your freedom,
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
it just kind of sounds like the argument, like, oh, what could go wrong? Well, a lot of things could go wrong.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying, what do you think?
Personally,
what do you think the government will do to you when they have your information and data?
Probably use it for medical scientific experimentation, maybe cloning,
Maybe the whole
CRISPR
ancestry
technology.
Absolutely. We know that, what was that experiment they did in San Fran where they sprayed the whole city with bacteria? So if they're tracking your biometrics, if they scan everybody's eyes and load them into an AI, the AI could probably navigate cancer rates and a whole bunch of weird stuff and then use that to socially engineer.
Yeah.
The best argument I've ever heard against mass surveillance is that marijuana has become legal, right? Are you a fan of marijuana being legal, Mary?
No.
Well, so the reason why it became legal, despite the fact that it was illegal, is because the government couldn't stop people from doing it. They do it in secret. People then began to share it, bask in the glory they found, and then convinced more people to do it. Eventually, a critical mass of people were breaking the law and said, maybe this shouldn't be illegal, and then voted to get rid of it. But if you had a mass surveillance where anytime you tried to smoke, a knock on your door, you were on camera, the camera we put in all of your homes has proven you've broken the law, what ends up happening then is there is no flexibility in the law and in social order, meaning the only move you can make is towards more laws and more illegality until you can't do anything at all. So there's a lot of things that marijuana is probably an extreme example because a lot of people want it to be illegal. But there's other examples, like if we had mass surveillance, women would still be wearing, fully flocked outfits with 17 layers. Because the moment a woman dresses down and tries going outside, the camera catches you and then the cops come and find you. So think about mass surveillance in like Iran. If a woman tries taking off hijab, they're going to know instantly and they're going to swarm her and they're going to arrest her before it can change. Mm-hmm. So typically mass surveillance is because you need flexibility. There are some things that people will do that is against the law, but they tolerate. And then with that tolerance, our society can adapt and change. But again,
maybe if it were used to stop people from smoking weed, then I'd just be all for it.
Yeah, well, there you go. Because the argument is this. If we have mass surveillance and biometrics, we can get rid of all the illegal immigrants.
But then it goes towards that whole social credit score stuff that's going on in China, which I think that's really what people are afraid of.
You're going to go to a grocery store, it's going to scan your eye and then say you're banned, whereas you could just pay cash and buy whatever you want.
It most definitely wouldn't, that technology would not be used to enforce the law against illegal immigrants. That just wouldn't happen. There's no will to use it for that purpose. Therefore, it's not going to happen.
Well, Trump wins. I mean,
it's going to be used to oppress the people who are born here for sure. Well, not to remove people who came in here illegally.
I do agree for the most part, but I do feel like this is the cynical American youth view. Like,
oh,
yes, because the government has been against us for so long in our lives. They have given us nothing. They have lied to us. They have spit on us. They have started wars. The assumption of the younger generations is it's an evil machine that can only do wrong. But then you get Cash and Dan in the FBI. And I'm like, this is different. So the issue largely is libertarians, civil libertarians will say, don't empower the government because then the bad guys come in and they'll use those powers against you. And the good guys tend not to. However, I don't have a big problem with people I know and trust wielding power. If there's a very good person and they wield tremendous power, but they only act with honor and integrity, then we're not really concerned. The concern is when corrupt people come into office. And so what I think we have right now is the reason why we are cynical on all of these issues of data collection is because government is corrupt. Just is. Like the scenario where Cash and Dan become like the permanent FBI is zero. It's just zero. So for now, it may feel good. And this is the opportunity for the government to expand because, you know, people in our position are going to say, I want the DHS to go after these illegal immigrants. So you know what? If it gets rid of 20 million illegal immigrants, I'm okay with the biometrics and all this stuff. The problem is, just because, I don't know, like Kristi Noem might be a good person doesn't mean the next person coming in is going to be good.
It's the same
Get a
thing.
Mayorkas or something.
It's the same thing with FISA, right? They used the FISA warrants and the FISA surveillance to go after terrorists after 9/11. Then it was weaponized against the Trump campaign, which I was part of. I was spied on via FISA, which is designated for terrorists and these kind of insane, you know, operations, and the president himself. So, like you said, you know, if it's in the hands of the good people, it won't be weaponized. If it's in the hands of the bad people, it will be weaponized. So we can't really take that chance. And I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't
that's
just
exactly
because. Just because we can't, the four of us sitting around the table can't think of a specific thing that would be used, our biometrics could be used to, you know, used and you know, corruptly used against us, doesn't mean that, you know, there aren't 1,000 things that are possible that we can't come up with sitting right here on the spot, you know?
No, the reason I ask is I'm wondering if you guys have really thought about it. I've had a lot of conversations recently, and I feel like most people haven't actually thought about it, but they do know that it's bad. And it's a good thing because we want the popular viewpoint to be like, we shouldn't tolerate these things. I can think of a bunch of really bad things. Namely, like we mentioned, you go to a grocery store and you're walking up and they've got all your information stored, social credit system, and you can't buy food anymore.
Yeah.
They ban you from food. They ban you from Ubers. Like, you know, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Taxi cab. Normally, what do? You hold your hand up, cab pulls over, you get in, you say, here's where I'm going, you hand him cash, clean. He didn't know who you are, we're good. Uber starts taking over, cabs are failing. Laura Loomer was banned from Uber.
Yeah.
What would happen if Uber dominated the taxi service and auto cars? You go on the app, you're banned. We know everything about you. We know everything you've said. We know where you are at all times. And now you're not. We can excise you from society.
It's one of the most common arguments against a central bank digital currency. You know, is they can literally just turn your money off, right? Like that's something that even though nowadays they can, you know, cancel your credit cards or, you know, shut all that stuff off. If you have cash, which people that, you know, some people still work with cash, but you can still survive if you have cash. You can get around, you can buy things. It's not common, but it's common enough where most businesses still have a cash register that has money for change in it. But if you were to go with a central bank digital currency and get rid of cash totally, then you're at the mercy of the government entirely for just to be able to survive.
I don't think there's anything stopping it.
What?
I think
CBDC?
All of it. All of it. I don't think most people realize. I think probably most people who watch this show have a general understanding, but most people in the world do not understand what AI is going to do to humanity.
Agree.
It's the singularity, as it's described, the point at which artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. It's an exponential growth curve where within a matter of days, the AI becomes something beyond our comprehension, and we become ants to it. If single-celled organisms relative to it, it's going to be able to predict the future, map the past perfectly. It's going to, you know. So I was at a museum. That museum was a rock store, but they had fossils and stuff. And there was a rock, a cube, that was cut specifically showing the layers of sediment. A sufficient AI will be able to tell you exactly where that rock was cut from, where it came from, and map out the history, because it's all like, it's like a game of Sudoku, where when you get far enough in it, you can just start filling in the numbers. That's what AI does. The faster it develops, the faster it'll just start filling in all the numbers and solve all of these technological hurdles and erase everything we think we know in society. It's going to be nightmarish. Do you guys know that China already has what they're calling dark factories? There's no lights. There's no light. You walk inside, it's pitch black, and the machines are all operating because the machines don't need visible spectrum wavelength. They operate on like sonar or just general math. They're just programmed to move this many degrees, and they're manufacturing things in pitch black.
And it's not just the factory jobs either. The AI is taking over even professional jobs, white-collar jobs. You know, how many of these jobs are going to be redundant now, from paralegals to potentially even doctors?
Yeah,
Yep.
There are AI algorithms that run the entire stock market now and make trades on the millisecond.
They already have robots that do microsurgery.
Yep.
AI, human goes in the machine just, the craziest thing. I mean, some of this is cool, I gotta say, that with sufficient AI technology, they can take your blood and then basically almost show you your lifespan. It'll tell you if you're in 7 years, 3 months, 4 days, you will develop lymphoma in this part of your body based on the current, makeup of your blood. It can craft bespoke medication. A machine will combine various chemicals, create pills, spit them out, and say, this is specifically for you, and if you take these, you will de-age. Like, it will cure your aging. Like, just ridiculous, insane things that they'll be able
How's
to do.
Big Pharma going to profit off of that?
Well, I suppose the bigger question is, it's a good question, but that question...
you have to keep taking it.
No. It's no one will profit off of anything. Profit won't exist. This is the collapse of humanity. The system breaks down immediately. Most people are going to plug their brains in a weird mishmash matrix nonsense. I have no idea how to predict an economic system when with ChatGPT, we're already eliminating tens of thousands of jobs every day. With Suno, the AI music, we are eliminating tens of thousands of jobs every single day.
That just means there's going to be a premium put on human-made and live entertainment.
I'm not so sure about that.
Because the AI will be better than human. So they've done this already for about 20 years with music. And Phil, I'm wondering if you've ever experienced this, where they've actually been able to map out the algorithm of music.
Yeah.
This is not AI doing this. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, human sound engineers were just taking all of the top 40s from the past, 80 years or whatever, and then they put them in computers and then tracked the pitch changes, the tempos, and were able to produce a formula for a hit.
Yeah.
What do humans like in music and why?
Look, most songs have the same intervals. They're, like 1, 3, 5 chords on, and it doesn't matter what key it's in. It's your root, your third, your fifth, and that's a chord progression. And that's why you hear people that have there's that comedy troupe that do the 4 chord song. It's not, they're not actually like, even, I don't know for sure that all the songs are actually in the same key.
They're not.
But the intervals are the same. And so they can play the same chords and sing 1,000 different songs over the same chord progression.
Well, I think you're saying that it's better in meaning that it's optimized. And what I mean that by like a premium put on live entertainment and human-made entertainment, I mean it in the same way as like fashion or Michelin star restaurants.
Did you know that Katy, I may be wrong about this, but I heard Katy Perry can't sell her latest tour. It's flopping.
I don't know.
Well, that's probably because ticket prices have inflated by a lot.
There's a lot of
So
So there's that. I'm sure you know more about
So
that
here-
type of
so-
thing than I
so-
do.
There is inflation.
Look, there's two things that are happening,
And
particularly in media.
scalpers and all that.
The cost of producing a show like this is going down, but the viewership for most media is going down as well. It's decentralizing. So we're falling down into a space where most shows are going to be dude in room with friend. And it's going to be kind of a hobby. With AI, we're a year away from being able to type in, maybe 2 years, but I think probably a year. Typing into an AI generator, make me an episode of Timcast IRL based on the latest news, and make the guest Donald Trump. And it will render the whole thing.
Like a hologram kind of situation?
No, it's like a video. I'll make a video online.
And you don't think some people will at least have the perception that there's more value in watching a real conversation?
Sure, they will. The only problem is,
And they'll pay for it?
no, they won't. First of all, there's going to be there's already individuals that are making AI content that people don't know is AI content.
It's all over X.
But no, what I'm telling you is, I've met with people who have explicitly stated, I have spoken my voice into an AI and scanned my body 3D so that they can AI generate news videos of me doing my job, and it's not really me.
Tell us who it is.
I can't.
I want to know.
Yeah.
I'm dying to know who's doing it.
It's prominent, wealthy individuals in media.
Wow.
I don't know if they've released the content yet, but they've explicitly stated to me
It's in like the testing stages.
they're building. So the technology already exists. All they have to do is, I got to be honest, this was like a year ago. They were telling me this. configure the system to represent them. So literally, they've taken my voice. They give this. It's a guy. Give him words to say. He reads a couple paragraphs. I think it might be a few pages because there's things like intonation that a person might say in different ways. And then they do. You stand in a room and they have cameras in every area, and you stand still and it takes a picture of every direction. And then once they have that, they can literally just put it into the AI. They can load a news story and then set a time limit, say 10-minute video, enter, and it will render a video where the dude's going, the story right now coming from the New York Times is that, and you can't tell. We I don't think people get it. I keep hearing from people, they're like, yeah, but people are going to want human-made stuff. I'm like, you are not going to know the difference. And when you put up this production, this studio, which this place costs millions of dollars to operate with all the staff and the electricity, the contractors, the camera equipment, the internet's super expensive, like uploading to millions of people. When you combine all those costs and then tell me I have to compete with some middle-aged guy who opened up a computer app and pressed news podcast enter and then uploaded it to YouTube, impossible.
Well, at the very least, that means there would still be a premium on live flesh and blood entertainment.
Perhaps.
Which can't be.
But Gen Z doesn't go outside anymore and they don't go anywhere anymore. It's true.
Well, that's a separate issue.
But if they don't go anywhere and do anything, and if they're broke and they can't afford to live, they're not going to spend money on anything.
And tickets cost money. Mm-hmm. Those live performances are going to run you about $50 to $100. A lot of people don't have that, especially younger people don't want to spend that kind of money.
Live events will be reserved for the ultra wealthy elite.
I don't think there will be live performances. But
I don't think the hunger for that is something that can be excised from the human person. I just don't believe that's possible.
We had newspapers. And everybody would go to the store in the morning and they'd grab their coffee and grab a newspaper, put it under their arm, sit on the bus or the train, and then read the newspaper on their way to work. That's how they got their news. Then TV came around, or radio, I should say. Then TV. Then people were turning the TV on at work or turning it on at home, and they'd get their news. Then they'd go to work. They didn't really know things except at key intervals. We got the internet. And I remember in the early 2000s, the internet was when I was at home. That was it. So I'd go out, I'd go skate, I'd go to work, then I'd get home and I'd go on the internet for about an hour and learn about stuff, but then I'd disconnect. This was mid-2000s. Then we got the iPhone, and with capacitive touch, instantly overnight, within like a year, the internet was ubiquitous. Everything changed. Media consumption just changed dramatically overnight. When AI rolls out the ability to make like we've already covered this the other day with these YouTube videos that are AI generated creepo slop. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you try to make an AI video of Nancy Pelosi. That's the example I give because it's on my Instagram and she looks like a Picasso. Today, you make an AI photo of Nancy Pelosi and it looks like a real photo. It's indistinguishable. Now we're moving on to video, which is getting to that point. It's not yet there. A year from now, short videos will be indistinguishable. And a year from then, long form videos will be indistinguishable. And then a year probably from then, full movies, even AI rendering video games themselves. We're already at the phase where Grok, so this was a viral video. Someone went to Grok and they said, make me a game of program Snake. And it wrote the code out for Snake. And then someone was like, here's the code. And they executed it and they played Snake. That's level 1. That's Model T. In a couple years, they're going to say, give me GTA 12. Or make me a Grand Theft Auto game that takes place in Japan. And it'll make the game for you. It's easy to say, no, people want that live performance. And that's exactly what Homeboy said in the 90s. I can't remember who it was. They said the internet will be a blip.
Oh, God.
Yeah, do you remember who that was? A famous quote?
Well, there was the Nobel Prize winner that said the internet would go the way of the fax machine, I think is what he said.
It wasn't Schiff. Robert Metcalf. Yes, Robert Metcalf, the inventor of Ethernet, said the internet will soon go spectacularly supernova and in 1996 catastrophically collapse. Of course, he was wrong.
It didn't work out.
What did Al Gore have to say about this, the so-called inventor of the...
Indeed. I'm just saying, I think if you went back to when the internet was emergent and then told CNN, the internet will take over your industry and you'll be jobless, they'd go, oh, please. What is everyone going to buy a computer for their house? Like barely anybody owns a computer. Why would they want to buy it anyway? It's a professional machine. No, people want to eat dinner with their families, turn the TV on in the background and hear the news, and that's us.
And that was just 20 years ago.
Yep. And then the funny thing is, Steve Jobs, when asked about the iPhone, it was a new product, and I believe his quote was, "How can people know that they want it if they've never seen it?" So the idea was, people were saying, "Why make a phone like this? Nobody's trying to buy one. Nobody wants one." He says, "If I make it, they'll buy it. How can they know they want it if they can't even see it?" And then they made the iPhone.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, Ford said the same thing with the Model T. You know, when people were in buggies and horses, you know, it was like, I will create the market and you will buy it.
Yeah.
And they didn't need it.
I think I hear this over and over and over again from people when they're like, nah, human music is always going to be better. Wrong. It's just not true. It's already largely algorithmically driven, and people just don't seem to realize this, that when you go to like a pop producer, they're not sitting there and just thinking like, I got an idea for a melody. They're going like, what's the tried and true interval and method, like Phil was describing with the 4-chord song. Mm-hmm. All these songs use this like similar time signatures, stamps, and chord progressions with various vocal melodies. And there was a really great video that talked about the O We O. I don't know if you saw this one, Phil. And I say this because it's your industry, but someone made a compilation of all of the millennial folk dirtbag songs where everyone go, oh, we, oh.
Yeah.
In every song.
Yep.
Because they were like, we have tracked this algorithmically and we know these songs are hitting right now with this generation. Make 70 of these songs.
Every single All That Remains hit song, right? All the songs that we, except for one. All the hit songs that we have, all the songs that have gold or platinum records, they all have the same chord progression. Even though they're tuned differently, they have the same interval progression in the chorus.
I'm going to read. You're kind of equivocating between calling something better and something that's optimized. Better is, in my mind, better it means something a little deeper than just
better is
what will be purchased.
Better is too subjective for to be useful in this. Some
people like to go antiquing. It can be fun, but it's not practical, and it's not a practical industry. So when I would say now, most bands, they probably I don't know, make like not most bands, but I would say like most working bands are probably making like a middle class living of that. Would you think, Phil?
Pardon me?
Like most like signed like successful bands, they're probably making like a middle class living.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a successful band nowadays, it's really like the streaming has hollowed out the music industry. Either you're struggling or you're huge. There's not a lot of middle ground anymore.
Now, how do you, Phil, compete with someone who can AI generate 7,000 songs in 1 week?
Yeah.
What's your plan?
It boils down to touring.
In person,
yeah.
like we were talking about.
Performance live.
So your career is doomed.
Well, I mean, for when All That Remains got started, like it was always about touring and always about live performance. There was never really, we got started. All That Remains. So the record that put us on the map called The Fall of Ideals came out in 2006. That is the exact same year that Spotify was created. So like we literally were watching the last helicopter leave Saigon,
and
from,
And I want to stress this too. Phil's career is not doomed. Phil had his career at the peak of like when he was able to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And what's happening now is the younger generation won't have that opportunity.
Yeah. There's it's so hard to break in nowadays. The only band that I can think of that has done anything remotely fresh or new lately is Sleep Token.
Let me do this. I do want to get back to the news, but I want to read one super chat because the SIG piece said, Tim, I disagree. As someone who has worked as a touring engineer for 20 years, good luck matching the energy of a crowd that's louder than my PA. Back me up, Phil. Here's what I'm going to say. I've already been to house shows, and I'm sure most of you have. I've already seen DJs who are literally not DJing anymore. To them, DJ means I have a playlist of MP3s, and then I just switch between them. They're pre-made songs. I have seen people do shows to 1,000 people where they're pretending to press buttons. Why actually do the work? The song's pre-programmed. And I will also add one last thought to that. No one is selling stadiums and live shows the way they used to 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Metallica to what, like 1 million people?
Yeah, I mean,
Whatever.
there's so you've got a handful of bands that can play arenas nowadays, like Metallica obviously can play stadiums. And then any other bands that are rock bands that are playing stadiums, if they're still playing stadiums, they're bands like AC/DC. I think they might do that, but most of them will be playing civic centers or smaller. And there are only, I mean, like Falling in Reverse, Sleep Token. I can't think of any
Rock
other bands
bands,
off
no.
the top of my head
But
that are playing.
Even Taylor Swift struggles to reach the level of Metallica. Like Taylor Swift's biggest shows were Metallica's average shows. And then Metallica had several shows with hundreds of thousands to 1 million people, whatever, that famous, what was it, in Germany or whatever?
I think it was
Metallica's
in
million.
Russia.
That was in Russia.
Russia.
Yeah. It was Russia, yeah.
That stuff just doesn't happen anymore. So, not that it'll be overnight, but once the AI singularity occurs, it is, I'm going to say it again. Nobody, not even the people building it, and they've all stated this, nobody has any idea what happens. We're talking about a computer that will be able to invent things by request. We're talking about someone pulling up GPT-12 and saying, design me a jetpack and then make it. And then the robots and the fabricators will start pulling things together and it'll make a functional jetpack. And it'll just invent it for you. You'll say, we want a cold fusion generator. And it'll say, here's the schematics for a cold fusion generator. And then it'll say, okay, build it for me. And then it'll do it. We're like well beyond all that stuff. We're talking about telling the computer, create a chip that can read write into a human brain. And it will just go, okay. Anyway, let's move on to the actual news. We've got a couple stories, and we'll start with this one from Human Events. Moscow bombs Kiev, killing at least 9, injuring dozens as peace talks hit the rocks. Now, why did they hit the rocks? Here's a tweet from Marco Rubio. Politico wrote, White House debates lifting sanctions on Russian energy assets, Nord Stream. The debate pits Steve Witkoff against State Department and U.S. energy export proponents. Rubio says this is unequivocally false. Neither Steve Witkoff nor I have had any conversations about lifting sanctions against Russia as part of the deal with Ukraine. This is journalistic malpractice. If Politico has an ounce of integrity, they will fully retract this piece of fiction. So what do you think happens if you're Zelensky and you see a report in one of the preeminent political newspapers in the United States saying that behind your back, the U.S. State Department has cut a deal with Russia or wants to? Zelensky says, no deal. And then what happens? Russia bombs their capital.
Yeah, but I mean,
the media is making the war worse. That's the point.
I mean, I think you're probably right. But Russia hasn't made any. They've done nothing to signal that they're going to go to to actually begin negotiations. The negotiations that Rubio's had with Russia have been largely fruitless, and Russia's in a position now where there's not a lot of reason for them to. If it seems like they want to wait out the U.S. because the U.S. has said if we can't. Marco Rubio said this: if we can't get a deal, then we're gonna have to step away from the table without any kind of signaling that they're going to send more money to Ukraine to support Ukraine. So Russia's like, well, we'll just wait him out.
So Zelensky is pro-Russia?
Zelensky? No.
Well, by not doing the deal with the U.S.
No, I'm saying Putin isn't doing the deal.
Right. By Zelensky not doing the deal because he backed off from the peace agreement. This then, the U.S. is going to pull out of the war. And then Russia gets to walk on in.
Well, I guess the logic is that the more money and the arms that were sent over the Ukraine, the more territory and men and women and civilians and soldiers that Ukraine ended up losing. And this has been an intractable war now going on 3 years. I think President Trump is looking at like a different perspective of how to end this thing. And Zelensky wants to not come to the peace. Zelensky
keeps talking about things like taking back Crimea, which is not even on the table. It's a ridiculous idea to think that that's going to happen. Russia's totally entrenched in Ukraine or in Crimea. They've got all Russian speaking people in that area now. That's not going back to Ukraine. So to even mention that, like the Trump administration is totally right. To mention that stuff is detrimental to the idea of any kind of negotiations. But unless they'll all actually get to the table, what are you going to do?
So what do you think, considering the instability and turmoil in the United States politically? Russia's got no incentive to negotiate because the deep state will block Trump?
I mean, I don't know that the deep state will block Trump, but Russia doesn't have any incentive to negotiate because they're winning the war, right?
Well,
like there's the argument that Ukraine is holding their own and blah, blah, blah. I don't buy it for a second. Russia's beating the absolute hell out of them.
This is the concern that I had before the election, that it had gotten to a point where Trump couldn't stop it. A couple of years ago, my opinion was if Trump was in office right now, the war would end. If Trump had stayed in office, there'd be no war. But at this point, I think Phil make a good point. Russia's attitude may be Trump doesn't want the war. His base doesn't want the war. And so he cannot advance. I can do whatever I want now. The war has gotten so entrenched. I feel like the strike on Kiev was Russia saying, we haven't even begun.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. Russia's got nukes. They've got nuclear artillery. That's low yield weapons that can be fired from, say, like a howitzer. And they haven't used any of it. If Russia wanted to crush Ukraine, they would. So this is the problem now with Trump demanding peace. Ukraine, I guess, just pattering and not getting, I mean, Zelensky leaves. He gets in that fight with Trump and then the deal's frozen or whatever. Now he's backing away. And Russia's attitude is probably, this is perfect.
Look, yeah. I think what's going on here, I think President Trump's looking at the big picture here. I think he views China as the biggest threat to America, both financially, economically, militarily. He sees Russia as a massive player in that relationship between Russia and China. I think he wants to separate them militarily and economically. This whole story about the U.S. lifting sanctions on Russian energy, my background's in energy. Trump is pro-U.S. shale, pro-exporting that LNG to the European market. There's no way that Trump is going to lift sanctions while he's trying to pump U.S. energy to the European market. So that said, then of course you have the Iranian issue, where Russia is massively implicated in the Iran nuclear agreement. They're protecting Iran. They have massive economic agreements with them, military agreements. So Russia's a major player that Trump in many ways has to deal with to solve those outstanding issues that affect America much more so than a territorial dispute between East and West Ukraine.
Yeah. As much as people will talk about Ukraine as being some kind of vital country for the U.S. and if we don't stop Putin in Ukraine, then he's going to take Poland and stuff. I think that's all posturing. I think that, Russia and Ukraine have a long history. It's not good for Europe, for Ukraine to be, a part of Russia, but I do think that it stops because really the catalyst was the idea of Ukraine joining NATO. That's what started this whole thing, the signaling from the Obama administration that they would allow it. There's strategic things when it comes to the Black Sea and Crimea and the ports, but really Russia wants to make sure that Ukraine doesn't join NATO. And I think that otherwise, I don't think that Russia has any kind of designs for the rest of Europe because they're all NATO countries currently. So I think that's all just posturing.
So where do we end up? I mean, what's Trump's priority got to be then?
Trump's priority has to be China. China's the biggest problem right now. There's no technology race with Russia, right? In the future, in the next 5 years, AI and power generation are the two biggest issues that the United States has to win on. The U.S. has to beat China when it comes to AI. And China doesn't have any compunction with using the CRISPR technology on their own soldiers. They're looking to create, genetically modified bionic soldiers, and that's not like some kind of. At one point it was science fiction, but nowadays it's not science fiction anymore.
We do have an update. It's actually not 9, that's 12. And Reuters is saying that Zelensky claimed it was a North Korean strike missile. It was a Russian strike, but it was a North Korean missile. What I will add to the China thing is we've known now for like a decade that China has been genetically engineering super soldiers.
What exactly does that mean?
It means that they take the embryos and they edit the genes to guarantee specific outcomes like more bone density, more muscle mass, taller, stronger, smarter, etc.
It's like Universal Soldier with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Absolutely.
It's like
Captain China.
Well, I mean, think about this, right? So one of the biggest problems that paratroopers in the United States have faced is they end up messing up their knees. Like when you're not the guys that are like the cool guys jumping out of the plane where they can coast themselves down. But regular airborne, they jump out and they're static lines. So they jump out and it automatically opens. They don't have a whole lot of control over it, and they can't slow down when they land. So after 5 years or 10 years, everybody that's airborne that jumps a lot has bad knees. Well, if you can increase the bone density and make the cartilage in between your knees, if you can make make it springier, then you can make sure you'll have fewer dudes that land and get injured when they land, and that means they're a more effective combat troop.
That's going to be stem cells.
I mean, maybe. I'm not sure, but the point
because cartilage doesn't regenerate as well over time. It wears down and then is gone. So long as there is still some cartilage in the knee, they can inject stem cells, which will then mold into the cartilage. I don't know. Certainly, they can make the legs stronger and stuff, but genetic engineering for something like that problem is a bit specific. You're better off engineering that problem away. What they're going to do is just make 6'5" ultra ripped dudes who never have to work out. And they're going to
5 Chinese. That's hilarious.
Yep. And
everybody's
I got to be honest, probably not 6 feet. I imagine it might be 5'8", 5'9". You don't want to be too tall, actually. Unless actually they just genetically engineer it to work better. Shorter people live longer. So if they're trying to create super soldiers, they're going to want like an average height for lifespan. And they're going to want to they're going to be able to do whatever they want.
But the point is, this is the future, right? So there's going to be significant competition between the U.S. and China about AI, about these types of technologies. Russia is not a leader on these technologies. Russia copies. I mean, China does a lot of copying too, to be honest with you, but they do have innovation too. There's a lot of Chinese, and a lot of them are brilliant. And they have no problem with sending students over to steal intellectual property. You'll have Chinese students come over, they'll go to college, they'll go to MIT, they go to these to STEM fields, they learn as much as they can, and then back to China with that information. And this is the future. As much as Russia is a serious, the war in Russia and Crimea and Ukraine can be a problem for the U.S. and for our foreign policy, it is not even in the same realm as China is. Donald Trump as a China hawk, that's the most forward-thinking Donald Trump has been, is in the way that he sees China, not just economically, but as a military threat as well.
Yeah, but look what sanctions really accomplished with Russia, right? They only basically drove these countries to create BRICS, right? To destroy the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. It weakened Russia to the extent that China took advantage of them because they had no other alternative market to sell their energy to, their weapons to. India stopped buying them, or India still buys them, but they went all to China. So that's really what happened here. China took full advantage of it. China's stronger than ever.
Yep.
And I think Donald Trump understands that, and that's why this tariff war is ongoing. And we're almost at a standstill because of China's strength at this point.
I want to jump to this story following the Russia stuff. It looks like, I don't know, people are saying World War III again. I mean, yeah. I've heard the phrase World War III probably enough at this point, but India and Pakistan are fighting now. India says they'll pursue the Kashmir attackers to the ends of the earth, and a bunch of measures have just been enacted. They say police in the Indian-administered Kashmir claim to have identified 3 suspects, 2 of whom are Pakistani, in the how do you pronounce it? Pahalgram attack. Killed 26 people. India's PM Modi vowed to hunt the Pahalgram gunmen to the ends of the earth. They've taken diplomatic measures against India. Pakistan has closing of airspace, land and border, and says any attempt to divert the waters of the Indus River will be an act of war. And it is being suggested that war may break out at any moment between India and Pakistan, which is already bad. But then you add all of the other war fronts, and sooner or later, China's going to say, break the dam and take Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, look, just so that way everyone's on the same page, you know, both Pakistan and India have nuclear weapons, and they hate each other, like in a way, like with a burning fury. There's religious disputes there, and they're essentially the same. You know, they come from the same background except for the religion. But yeah, they've both got nuclear weapons.
Pakistan's got 170.
Yeah, I mean enough to spark something off. And I don't know what the United States posture is.
India has 180.
I know the United States looks at India as an ally. I think we look at Pakistan as at least friendly to us. We did have pretty good relations with Pakistan during the war on terror, if I understand correctly. But I don't know if the U.S. picks a side. I don't know if the U.S. gets involved. It's likely that because of the posture between India and China, China sides with Pakistan as opposed to India. And that's, it's historically the U.S. has been fairly friendly with India because of India's history as a British colony. And so I don't know what it turns into, but it's definitely a tinderbox that could leak over. I mean, everyone knows, not everyone knows, but most people are familiar with how World War I started, and nobody thought that one man being assassinated would set the whole world into global war. That, I mean, really, it stopped for 20 or 30 years, but World War II was literally an extension of World War I. So.
Yep.
Yeah, this thing is really interesting because we're talking about China and the tariffs and Russia and all these things. So what the U.S. right now is actually trying to do is to decouple China as like the manufacturing powerhouse of the world and replace it with India. So there's been this proposal that's been enacted by President Biden, now President Trump supports. It's called the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. So basically what that means is that goods would be manufactured in India, not in China. They would be shipped to Saudi Arabia, into the Middle East, and then on to Europe. So I'm not surprised to see that Pakistan or some terrorist groups in Pakistan that are supported by countries like China, Turkey, which has a lot to lose by this alternative corridor, are supporting this kind of stuff. So I think these kind of conflicts are going to heat up, and I think a lot of it is being driven by economics, trade, and other issues, more so than just these random attacks. There's nothing ever random at this level.
Wouldn't you say that kind of incentivizes China to help Pakistan further, or that's more incentive for China to help Pakistan?
Yeah, so what's going on is China has this thing called the One Belt, One Road, and Turkey is supposed to be the transit route into Europe from the goods going from China. So Pakistan, being an ally of China, I think is completely in line with what you just said, that China would continue to support Pakistan to destabilize India, to prevent India from surpassing or replacing China as this new hub that the United States wants.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole lot of bad news.
But do you think it's going to, do you think we're at risk of all these different regions destabilizing?
Yeah, look, I think the world is being split off into spheres of influence right now, and I think President Trump understands that. I think Vladimir Putin understands it. I think the president of China understands it too. That's why I think that mineral deal with Ukraine was all about. It was about basically de facto dividing East-West Ukraine. The United States and Europe take over the West. Russia has some sort of influence in the East. Then you have this issue going on now with that I just explained with Pakistan and India. It's splintering. And the United States rightfully is focusing on its own backyard. That's why Secretary of State Rubio, his first foreign policy trip wasn't to the Middle East. It wasn't to Asia. It was to Latin America. That's what Greenland's all about. That's what the Trump doctrine's all about. And that's what these investments in Latin America are really all about. That's how I see things like going on in the world right now.
Yeah. I don't know how much more of the World War III I can take.
Yeah.
I've certainly had my share of videos where it's like, Russian guy says World War III has come, and the Russia-Ukraine thing is World War III. You've got China ready to take Taiwan, and then you've got here at home, what do we really care about? I don't want to be involved in foreign conflict. I did an interview with Seb Gorka that we put up today, and I told him, I was like, he talks big game on bombing the terrorists, the Houthis, ISIS and Somalia and stuff, and I said, I don't want to be this. I'm rather non-interventionist. He made an interesting point. We don't want regime change wars. We don't want to go into countries and flip over their governments. Trump's not about doing that. Yeah. But when you've got people firing rockets at trade ships and cargo ships in the Red Sea, American vessels even, well, we got to stop them. And so it's not an easy answer. And I asked him about, letters of marque and reprisal, and this is the modern version that you get, I suppose. I don't know how the world works, and I'm not saying I can give you a good answer to everybody listening. But when you've got Houthi rebels bombing ships in the Red Sea, shutting down a massive portion of global trade because you can't go through the Suez anymore, what do you do? Do we just say we don't want to be involved in a conflict with Yemen, so we just let the Red Sea get shut down?
Yeah, I think
do we go to war?
I think these surgical strikes are like they're being impactful and benefiting global trade, global commerce, and keeping these trade lanes open and the sea lanes open, because this is really what it's about. It's about global commerce. If these people, the Houthis, keep shooting down or attacking vessels, global commerce is going to stop. Most of trade is done via sea, not by rail. So it's very important to prevent that from happening. But also, alternatively, we can't conduct regime change operations anymore. We can't go back to the neocon George W. Bush days where you're overthrowing, tin pot dictators or, replacing them with other cronies and then just having destabilized countries. And that creates a boomerang that we feel to this day. So I think, President Trump's absolutely right on this. And that's probably why Hegseth, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, is facing some pressure, because he's in line with that.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the fourth turning? Strauss generational theory?
Yes.
So it's funny because you can keep going back, and you have, if we start from the American Revolution, you have an internal conflict between the colonies and the crown, which is internal. Then 80 years later, I'm sorry, that was international. That was, foreign powers like France getting involved in the British War. The Civil War was internal. Then you have World War I and II, which is external. And now there's a question of whether or not the fourth turning for us will be internal or external. But I got to be honest, it kind of sounds like it's going to be both. With the wars we're seeing overseas and the internal fighting between the cult deep state and Trump, it seems like it's going to be everything, everywhere,
I think that's, why we had to stop all these Soros-financed DAs in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles that were really instigating this behavior of criminality, letting the criminals off, and the innocents, holding the bag of those type of policies, the war against the police, defunding the police movement, all of these bizarre agendas that were propagated and pushed down the American people's throats, I think created that division. And then you have that in tandem with the open border and this ticking time bomb with millions of potential liabilities that are now in the country illegally. That's a recipe for disaster.
But I fear that the corruption may be too entrenched in the United States. We started off the show talking about this judge. His wife is arrested. Look, I've brought it up time and time again. We were talking to Ro Khanna, and was Ro Khanna born here, or is he a naturalized citizen?
I think he was born here, but I'm not 100% sure.
But he said we should give all undocumented immigrants a path, and he's not wrong to think that. The issue is, of course he does. His parents are immigrants. So in his moral worldview, everyone should be allowed to be an immigrant. Not me. I come from several generations of Americans who, my family was just telling me, fought in the Revolution. Were in the American Revolutionary War. I actually think I may have had family on both sides of the Civil War, to be honest. I have no idea. But I think so. For me, the legacy and history of this nation matters substantially more than it does to an immigrant. They came here, and their history as their home country split with some of America. Mine's just America. To be fair, I have a Korean grandmother, but I don't really know much about that at all, other than, my family was largely just American tradition. So when I look at what's going on with immigration, we've got to such a degree of the children of recent immigrants. I got no problem with immigration over a long period of time. The problem is too much all at once leads to a large portion of your country creating its own culture, its own separate worldview, and then conflict breaks out. And it feels like, I feel like that's where we're heading. Not to be black-pilled. I mean, I can be white-pilled and say that young men are more conservative and more likely to be Christian. So maybe there's a shift back in the right direction. But I wonder if everything we're seeing is just going to result in an internal conflict of some sort, because we can't break the entrenchment, at least not in 4 years.
Is it your sense or anyone's sense that if there is some kind of international issue with some kind of war or whatever like that, do you think that would solidify people in America? Do you think that it would drive people apart?
No way. It's going to drive everybody apart. I mean, war happens in Ukraine and the country splits on it. There were a lot of people who thought COVID was going to unify the country. No, it split the country in half. Everything is falling down these lines. And, I got to be honest. Is it just that Democrats are just evil? They're just is it? Because, you bring up an issue and it's like, here's an MS-13 gang member who beats his wife. And they're like, we're for it. And I'm just like, oh, Okay.
I
That's a
think
weird
that-
thing to be in favor of.
I think, go ahead.
No, I think that's what you were saying, though, about like American identity vis-a-vis like new immigrants and people holding on to the old country. And I think that what the Democrats are pushing is identity politics to the extent where they want people to always feel like there's one foot in the United States, one foot in some external conflict, whether it's in Latin America or in the Middle East. And that's why so many of the Democrats are so invested in all these conflicts, and they're always on the wrong side. They're always supporting, Hamas, for example. They're always supporting, anti-American policies, Native American policies, whatever you want to call them. And I think that's something that Trump is completely against. And when he says he wants to unify the country around the red, white, and the blue, that's why the Democrats are so hateful against it. They call him a fascist, a nationalist. That's how I see it.
Well, I think AI is going to wipe out the planet, and I think China's going to win. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but AI is stealing all of our IP to program their AI, and in the United States, you can't do that.
If the U.S. doesn't, if the actual federal, and I hate to admit this, but if the federal government doesn't do something about, first of all, IP theft, and second of all, doesn't start actually dumping real money into power generation and the ability to make, high-tech advanced chips here, we're gonna lose.
Look, when I was discussing the singularity, the ability of an AI to invent things for you, the reason people are freaking out is because China may get there first, because they just steal our tech. In the West, we're constrained by IP law, and IP law is a good thing. But China is, the Chinese Communist Party is evil, and they're not constrained by any of this. If they can get to the point where they reach artificial superintelligence first, and then say, generate schematics for cold fusion or other weapons technology, they're going to advance so rapidly we'll be left in the dust.
If you're not cheating, you're not serious about winning. And China is very serious about winning. And they will steal as much as they can. They have every intention of beating the United States. And as long as the United States has the policies and the posture towards China that we do, they're going to win. They're going to eat our lunch.
Because the U.S. is playing by the rules and
Yeah.
China's breaking them.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
From the World Trade Organization to the post-World War II economic, financial, military architecture that we propped up, that's all dissolving in front of our eyes.
Absolutely.
So that's something that I think we need to rewrite.
And also, to your point, the United States has been, we talked about this before, Tim talked about it a lot, the idea of China being, China is rising and the U.S. is kind of has crescendoed and on the way down, and what the policy of the U.S. has been, or has seemed to be when it was Obama and Biden, was to prevent the U.S. and China getting into a conflict.
All right, everybody, we're going to go to your chats and hear what you guys have to say. But before we do, we got a great sponsor. It's Lear Capital. Go to leartim.com. That's Lear Tim.com. And you're going to get yourself some gold and silver. Trump's trying to make America great again. It's not going to happen overnight. Personally, I have held gold and silver for a very long time. I bought my first silver probably 20 years ago. And to be completely honest, I even have a large box of copper. I literally do. There's a copper ingot out in the other room. I just think it's good to have a store of value, diversify it where you can. Now, the crazy thing is gold skyrocketed with news of tariffs and what's been going on internationally. People have been getting cold feet. So gold spiked up to, I think it's at 3,400. Goldman Sachs, the same experts who are predicting 3,200 an ounce, are saying it could reach $4,500 an ounce or more. So while the government can print, borrow, and run recurring budget deficits, you can't do this. Your retirement, your savings, your pension, 401k are fixed income accounts, so you're not going to get a bailout. That's why more Americans are acquiring gold and silver to protect their money and their own financial future. I bought a bunch a while ago, just put in a safe, and it's been a great store of value. So Lear Capital, it's an education-first company. You got no pressure to buy. 24-hour risk-free purchase guarantee, over 25 years in business with over 3 billion trusted transactions, thousands of 5-star reviews. You got a lot of companies to choose from, but Lear, these are our guys, and we really do appreciate their sponsoring the show. Take a positive step to protect your wealth. Call Lear Capital. You've got this number if you'd like to purchase gold and silver, 1-800-489-6450, or like I said, leartim.com, and you can get a free gold and silver investor kit. A special offer to the viewers of Timcast IRL. First-time buyers can get up to $15,000 in bonus gold or silver with a qualifying purchase. So again, LearTim.com or call 1-800-489-6450. Shout out Lear. I really do appreciate the sponsorship. But let's go to your Rumble rants and super chats now. And let's see what we got. Shane H. Wilder says, Mary flies in and goes straight to IRL. Congrats on being on Pints with Aquinas. The pop culture news has been popping off while you and Brett were gone.
Yeah, it was a big Catholic creator collab between myself and Matt Fradd, and thank you for the recognition.
We decided that we were going to be changing PCC from Pop Culture Crisis to Pop Catholic Crisis so that Mary can just preach the whole time.
Yeah, well, Brett is Catholic.
Is he really?
He was raised Catholic.
He's lapsed, right?
I just consider him Catholic. You're just Catholic.
Mary considers me Catholic, though.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. If you're baptized Catholic, you're Catholic.
Well, we just talked to someone that's not sure you're baptized Christian, but you have to be confirmed Catholic, right?
Right. I actually did get confirmed later than most. I got confirmed 3 years ago, but I guess that means I get my gold star of approval.
I'm still not allowed to have an opinion on the Pope, though, huh?
No. Yeah. Because if you don't submit to his authority, then who are you to talk?
I guess.
That's my take.
Corporal Fett says, the people irate about Tim explaining how Carmelo will be defended is infuriating. Tim never said that he was innocent, just that he would be defended and that there wasn't enough evidence. Yeah, the issue, I believe, largely comes from people on X are spreading a false narrative about what the story was and saying things like Carmelo didn't know anybody there and he was trespassing. It's like he wasn't trespassing and he did know. The police report literally says he was friends with the witness who ID'd him. And I actually didn't know this either, that Austin Metcalf was 6 foot 225. And so I asked Andrew Branca, self-defense lawyer, will that play a role? Of course it will. So we don't know how this is going to play out. I do think there's probably video evidence that the police saw, and this one's going to be, you can't stab a guy even if you think he's bigger than you. It doesn't matter. It's a high school, right? There's another story that's going viral now of another dude getting stabbed and being put in critical condition. This one's not going as viral, though, because the dude who got stabbed was ground and pounding the dude. And then someone tried to pull him off him. The dude started attacking the other guy, and then the dude who was on the ground got up, got in the fight, and then stabbed him. So that was actually in Alexandria, I think, in Fairfax County, which is like not too far from here. Let's go. Barry N. McGrowan says, Tim, has anybody checked Ian for a heartbeat today? Ian, you know, it's not fair to say this because he's not here, but I'm going to say it anyway. He doesn't understand that he doesn't have evidence for anything he's claiming. And he believes that because he read a book that claims science is real, it is real because they told him it was evidence. And I'm just like, I don't know. I think his mind could use some expanding. And it's funny considering, you know, everyone assumes Ian's expanded a little too much, but nope. You probably would have enjoyed that conversation with him.
What was it all?
He arbitrarily brought up that Christians are dumb for believing the Bible, basically.
Oh.
He didn't say dumb, but he said, when I said the left blindly just believes whatever in the news, he says the right has that too, and it's the Bible, a 2,000-year-old book that they're claiming without evidence. And not that I'm a Christian or anything, but I was just like, there's a philosophy of knowledge that the only thing I know is that I know nothing. We are choosing what to believe based on our perceptions and what we believe is likely correct. So I asked Ian, how do you know that graphene is real? You've never done the experiments. You've never made graphene. You never tested graphene. You've never done anything. You just read someone's article about graphene and believed it was true. And he's like, no, I have evidence. And it's like, okay.
The definition of faith, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So there's obvious evidence. Like if I were to take this mallet and whip it as hard as I could at the window would break. To be fair, I don't know, it's rubber, but I assume it would break. There's things we know that are simple. But for the most part, when someone tells me like, you know, electrons are real, I just believe you, I guess.
Yeah, most people just don't know how much they operate on faith on a day-to-day basis and then use that as a way to intellectually grandstand over people who have faith. And to be sure, like there is a component of the leap of faith in religion, but that's not to say there's no evidence. There's plenty of evidence and he has not read it. And I don't know if he's even willing to.
Yeah.
It's really about, like, do you
He
have
hasn't.
the willingness to engage with that material? Like, do you have the willingness to read Aquinas' 5 proofs? Do you have the willingness to read about historical evidence for the resurrection?
Well,
That's the
I would
question.
just say this for you know, and Ian will have his chance. So I do feel it's unfair. He's not here to defend himself, but for a guy who loves graphene, who's never actually done any of the scientific research to test and be in graphene, he has a lot of faith in graphene. Like, dude, if you've never actually made a superconductor or a graphene lithium battery, or gone to the labs and actually watched them manufacture it, and then pull up the electron microscope to show you the one-dimensional lattice or whatever, you've never even done that?
Does he deify graphene in his worldview? Would you say?
Not literally, but yeah.
Because with
It's
a
an
lot of
idol.
things, it's like people idolize things and they deify things in their lives that don't make demands of them and what they can do with their genitals. Not saying that that is Ian, but like that is the case for a lot of people. They just choose what to worship, and it's usually the thing that makes the least demands of them and what they can and can't do with their genitals.
I'm going to say this to Ian as a challenge. The people we tend to have on this show who are Christian or Catholic or otherwise have done more research into their faith than he has into graphene.
He's done a lot of research into graphene.
He's
LSD
never
is not
actually-
research
Tough
into
competition.
graphene.
He's never actually gone to a lab and spoken with the experts and tested it. He said he's never even looked through an electron microscope. So when you have people who have traveled the world and met with great religious thinkers and preachers, and like, I got to be honest, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, that Ian's ever even gone on a podcast about graphene. How many podcasts have you gone on about faith and religion?
Are there podcasts about graphene?
Most people that say that they say they've read something or they've studied it. Most people haven't actually done a lot or in depth, especially nowadays. I do wonder exactly how much he's actually read about like graphene, because when he's articulating it, he seems to know, like, kind of have a wavetop understanding, but I don't know that he has a deep understanding of it. He's never really really gotten into like the depths of it, you know.
We should call into the call-in portion.
Yeah, Ian, call in.
Well,
Tell us about graphene.
we were supposed to have a religion show with him. So I don't think it's ever happened. But let's not harp on that.
Yeah.
He'll get his chance to respond. But let's read some super chats. Quantum Strange Quark. Oh, we didn't get into the story. Has anyone considered that the Trump 2028 hat might be referring to another Trump, such as Don Jr. or Eric, since he can't serve again? Yep. Yeah. I'm surprised more people haven't been saying that. Trump put out the 2028 hat, and what did it say? Rewrite the rules or something like that? There are other Trumps.
It's just a troll.
Baron 20, what would that be?
30.
It wouldn't even be in the 2030s.
How old is he now? He's 19?
He's 18, I
He's
thought.
18?
Yeah, I think he just turned 19.
You know, that's
Yeah,
20
that's
years
a-
before
So it's
Barron could.
2036?
I think he's 19. He's 19. Yeah. Yeah, March 20th is his birthday. Just turned 19. So he's got 16 more years. 41.
I'm looking forward to it.
2042. He's going to be like, he's super tall. What is he, like 8 feet tall?
Might be AI president by then, though.
Right.
No. Here's what's going to happen.
By that,
After World War IV ends, because timelines are crunched due to the speed of communication. So World War III is going to start soon, last for about 5 years. Then we're going to have like a year break, then World War IV. Then once most of the world is destroyed, 7 foot tall, 300 pounds of pure muscle Baron, grizzled and scarred with a beard, is going to run for president of the unified territories of what was once called America.
kind of like a John Connor kind of situation.
I can't hear you.
For
Like Halo?
post World War IV, you're going to have a low enough rad count to be the president, so that way you're not going to die in office.
All right. Greg Duvier says, happy 38th birthday to me. This is my last childless birthday. My wife and I are expecting twins this summer.
Congrats.
Let's get this birth rate up to baby boom, too. Let's go, babies. I had lunch with the family today. It was beautiful. My daughter is so well-mannered.
Oh.
We had Korean barbecue, and she slept the whole time. And then she slept the whole way back.
Congrats, by the way, man.
Thank you. It was perfect. I was told that I was a very quiet baby as well. So we're blessed. She sleeps, and she only cries when she needs something specific, and it's relatively easy to manage. Let's go. The Collins Effect says, look for the article about CA letting out an illegal immigrant who was deported twice. He was sent to jail 2 years ago for manslaughter. He killed 2 young adults drunk and high while driving. There was another story that I saw going viral where the New York Times wrote about a dude from Jamaica. Do you see this one? He came here and then like right away kidnapped somebody and went to prison for 15 years. God. And then he just got deported to Jamaica. And the New York Times is like, but he doesn't know this place. He was living in America for so long. It's like, yeah, in prison. What?
2 warm meals a day.
Yeah.
You know?
Daniel Schultz says, listening to David Hogg speak is like drinking a tumbler of hot garbage water while trying to gargle broken glass. You know, the Democrats' strongest man is David Hogg. Or the strongest man the Democrats have is David Hogg. Is that an insult to David Hogg, or am I, an insult to the Democrats or praise for David Hogg? You decide. Could go either way. Tom Kavanagh says, the problem with Real ID and other things like that is simple. The government is not trustworthy. Yes, but the reason I was asking the question is because what will they do is the question. Like, what is the actual manifested action they will take? What have we here? Sean H says, hey, Tim, it's my 39th birthday today. I was wondering if I could get a birthday shout out. Shout out, Sean H. I'm working late at my restaurant, doing what I love and listening to Timcast as I do every night. This is my forever news source. Really do appreciate it, man. Well, we just, we hang out and I complain about things and my friends join me in that endeavor. I'm glad that you found value in it. Let's see, what do we got? Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, nice black pill segment, bro, LMAO. Hey, you got to be prepared for what's coming. Kit Blank says, Phil and Mary, the human future in music isn't unique creativity. It's ephemeral and analog performances until the T2 robots. Yeah, didn't you guys see when they brought Tupac back?
The hologram Tupac, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just more interested in the question of like how we ought to live if that is inevitably the future. Not whether it will happen or what's going to look like. I'm just more interested in what we ought to do as a response.
So I think one scenario, which doesn't account for any unforeseen variables, is that liberals are going to plug their brains into the machine in 2 seconds.
Is that what Neuralink's all about?
Neuralink right now is mostly about it's reading brain signals, and the read-write technologies they're doing so far is that it's largely read.
Yeah.
So they can plug something in your brain, and it can take data from your brain and then put it somewhere else. So there's a guy who plays Civilization with his mind. He's paraplegic, and he's just plugged in. He plays Civ, and it's awesome that he can move things around with his mind and control it that way. That's really interesting.
Is it awesome though?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I don't think that's awesome.
Someone who's paraplegic and is like bedridden and can't do anything now has access to a computer is amazing.
Yeah, but like,
would you rather he just be laying there?
The trade-off being like either no one has it or like paraplegic people can like play Tetris. I just would rather no one has it.
Well, what's likely going to happen?
I don't think that's actually improving anyone's quality of life.
That guys. And the next phase is they're going to attach it to the nerves where they've been severed, and then you will be able to walk again.
Yeah, I don't really care. Human suffering is not something that we're going to overcome.
If you broke your spine, you'd get it.
No.
Yeah, you would.
How do you know that?
Because I don't think anybody on earth would believe you. If you lost the ability to walk, you would say no to having your body healed. Because you probably get a bunch of medications that someone 200 years ago would have argued with the same thing that you're arguing now.
About like what? Ibuprofen?
And antibiotics and other weird chemicals they make, and like, okay. Let me think of a. I can't think of the word. It's an antibiotic that's like synthesized chemical. Like, look up how they make standard antibiotics, even like amoxicillin, and it's nuts. It's not something a person can just do. It's like laboratory grade. Dozens of people have to do all these different things, and I'm sure a long time ago people would have been like sorcery. And they would have strung the scientists and doctors up for doing it. Now you're like, nobody should have this technology. A chip that can connect severed, like a cast, or, like crutches or leg braces. These are mechanical things that attach to a person to correct a problem and heal them and increase their quality of life.
I mean, you can print prosthetic hands and stuff now, right?
They've got the robot ones with like chains, and you can like pull your arm and it closes and opens.
That would definitely be, they would be like, that's possessed.
Dude,
There's demons in your arm.
compared to 100 years ago, we're like living cyborgs.
Yeah.
Compared to what people.
Well, I mean, like, look at your cell phone even.
Yeah, this is like an appendage at this point. You know,
Yeah.
it's like my whatever.
Like, you'd be called a witch. They'd be like, this is demonic.
Yeah.
How could you do this? You know?
How did you put those people in there?
or just you're using a seer stone, and that's sorcery.
Yeah.
And that is a hell-worthy trespass. Like, you'd be strung up as a witch. So my view is just, I would bet a large sum of money that if you were paralyzed from the waist down and Elon said, this little chip we can attach to the severed portion and you'll walk tomorrow, you'd say yes.
Attached to what?
So where the spine is severed,
You're not talking about Neuralink?
this is
Talking about
Neuralink.
something else?
This is Neuralink. Neuralink is connecting the nerves and reading and writing to the body or to a computer. So if you severed your spine from the waist down, you were paralyzed, and Elon said, we will take this chip, attach it to the top, and then gap where the sever is to the bottom, reconnecting these signals, you will then be able to walk and move and feel and everything.
Okay, I'm talking about an either-or situation. That the implication is this will not be a technology primarily used for addressing physical, like medical impairments. It will be used to enhance the so-called enhance the human body. If it's an either-or choice, if I like press a button, where like we have a world where we can't fix these medical impairments, but also we're not going to have bionic enhancements, or we're going to have both, I would say neither is better.
Agreed, but you use it in 2 seconds.
No.
Yeah, you use the internet too. What's the internet for?
What are you? How is that a comparison at all?
So what is the internet for? Communications?
Sure.
What is it used for actually? Porn, degeneracy, weirdos having meetups, dating apps. The principal function of the internet is for human degeneracy. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be standard economics, but instead, people don't go outside anymore. They don't exercise anymore, and they largely just self-gratify by connecting themselves to the internet. They go online and argue with strangers and look at pictures of cats and then do untoward things in their bathrooms. The argument was that the speed of the internet was rapidly increased because the market for porn was so high. They needed to deliver images faster. So they were trying to figure out how to transmit data. But you do use it. So in the event the technology emerged, you wouldn't go, nobody should use this. You'd be like, yeah, I'll use it. It would be ubiquitous. Everybody would use it. Not to mention, in terms of Neuralink and like losing control of your legs, who would clean you and bathe you? It's like the choice for an individual between having to hire someone to lift you into a bathtub so that they can wash you and wipe your butt for you for the rest of your life, and you can't go up and down stairs, and some buildings are now inaccessible to you. You can't play basketball. You can't do sports. People are going to say, I'll take the chip. And you would
like
too.
This is a eugenic mentality.
It may be.
That life isn't worth living if you're impaired. And
Never said that. I'm saying the average
this is
human.
the same mentality that's used to justify killing these people.
You genuinely believe that given the choice, people would not choose to have their ability to walk
I'm
again?
talking about myself.
Right, yeah.
I'm not talking about everybody else. I'm talking about me.
So what about that is eugenic? To say that people
No,
would
I'm talking
choose
about this, about the mentality that people generally have today, which is behind a lot of the justifications for abortion as well.
who's going
That
how,
life isn't worth living if you're impaired.
how would you pay someone to clean your butt for you?
In the situation where I decline
Yeah,
to
you
use
let's
Neuralink,
say you become paraplegic. How are you going to pay for your wheelchair? Who's going to make it for you? Are you going to insist the government pay for your wheelchair for you?
I don't know. I haven't thought about this insane hypothetical that you came up with.
But this is not an insane hypothetical. This is a reality for a lot of people who are paraplegic and are excited for Neuralink to help them walk once again. They need assistance. They wear diapers, sometimes colostomy bags. They have to hire nurses to clean them. if they not all, but many require help getting into bath, and this is a reality for people who can't move their legs.
Well,
or how about from like your chest down, you can't move your arms?
You're kind of reading into it that I'm accusing them of some kind of moral failing if they would choose differently than I would.
I'm saying there is no reality in which you could convince me you would not take the cure.
Well, okay, then that's just what you believe, and then you can just believe that what I say isn't true, and there's no way to falsify what you say. If I'm just if I'm just lying, like, okay, you
I just don't
believe that.
I just don't think
Nothing I say could convince you otherwise. So there's
There
you go, Tim. You're right.
Well, it's an opinion. Like it's not a fact statement. I'm saying that was literally my point. I don't think you can convince anybody that you would not. Like, I'll ask you guys, if your spine was severed and you couldn't walk anymore, and Elon said, I can install this chip, it's a 20-minute procedure, and then you will be walking again by tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
I would do it.
I'm pretty sure 99.999% of people would do it, save maybe like, perhaps you're correct, like Seventh-day Adventists might be like, no. But that only is possible if there's someone who's going to take care of you. Someone's going to get you the wheelchair you need. They're going to build a ramp to your house. You're going to have a support system because now you're not going to be able to do the same kind of work. So how are you going to make money? I suppose for you, your personality, so you would be able to do the same kind of work. So that was wrong. But for a lot of people, if you're like a construction worker and you're in an accident and now you can't walk, you can't do construction. So who takes care of you? For a lot of these people, they rely on the kind graces of others. But if Elon walked up and said, this chip will make you walk, they'll say, please. There are a lot of people that beg Elon every day on X saying, please, can I get in this trial? I'll do anything.
I think that we just have such drastically different worldviews that we're never going to see this the same way because I just view human suffering differently. And I think that human suffering can bring about other goods that aren't as obvious as being able-bodied.
But my point is, someone else has to keep you alive.
That's a good thing. People
Who will do
helping
it?
Other people
We'll do it.
Well,
I mean,
you either
family.
hire someone or it's family members. That's the
Right.
case for people who are disabled currently.
I think the reality is for a lot of people, they struggle with that. And so there's nonprofits that will send people to help them because they may not have anybody. But we'll grab a couple more of these chats. Let's go. What do we got? Insert clever name here says, yes, Phil, Sleep Token. New song tonight at midnight.
Oh, boy.
Oh, there you go. Aramond says, new media manipulating countries for headlines and wars. Sounds familiar. 1997 Bond movie Tomorrow Never Dies. I don't know. I've not seen it. Down the Empire says, only grip on student loans is I can't use GI Bill retroactively. Can get a new grad degree free up to $120,000, but can't forgive $45K of remaining loan debt. That's effing crazy. Already repaid $80, by the way. I think we should. There's got to be forgiveness, but it's got to be. You have to pay back what you were given.
Yeah.
Interest rates at this moment should be suspended, so you're paying back what you were given. And if you've already paid more, then your debt is now gone, and you get a tax credit for the excess. Because there are people who took out like a $50K loan and were paying the minimums because either they weren't working. And I get it. Some people say it's, people chose not to work and they deferred. No. Let's say there's a person out there, $50K in loans for school, couldn't find work, so they're paying the minimums, and it was going up. And so there are a lot of people, they're like, I took out a $50K loan, I've paid $63,000, and I still owe $37,000. And it's like, okay. Pay back the remaining, you've already paid more, so we're going to get rid of it. You've paid back your debt. Maybe we put the interest on top where it's like, we're not going to give the tax credit because there is a buying power issue there. But if we don't do this, millennials won't buy houses. They're not going to have families. They're not going to get jobs. And that's largely why what we're seeing. Not completely, but it's a component. All right, let's go. Let's grab, what is this? Alonzo Pre says, correct me if I'm wrong, but Border Patrol and ICE are doing mass hiring and offering sign-on bonuses. I looked into it, training 8 weeks, 3 months, so there's still hope. We just need the manpower. I have patience in Trump. Did I read that one already? I didn't?
No.
I must have read it to myself while we were talking. Well, perhaps Phil Dude Bro says, honest question, if China develops an AI, why can't we just hack it and plant a virus? The AI would probably just eliminate it from its code. It would just clean itself.
I mean, also, there's no guarantee that we have access to whatever system it's on, right? Like, so China has the Great Firewall. Now, I'm not sure that we don't have access to China's internet, but China does have its own internet that is actually isolated from the rest of the world, if I understand correctly, or there are only certain ways in, so...
I think that's more for like their domestic consumption. I think you can hack that for externally.
We can?
I think.
Okay.
The Great Firewall or whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more. We got David Ochoa. How do you imagine we'll handle designer babies from the wealthy, built to inherit abilities to super athletes or business leaders? It's going to happen, and it's going to be a function of the market, because parents are going to go in, and the doctor is going to say, we noticed that in your genetics, you have cancer in the family. We can do this light tweak, in utero that will eliminate that genetic anomaly, and your child will not have cancer. And that's where it starts. Then they're going to start getting to eye color. They're going to start getting to height. They're going to say that we couldn't help but notice that you guys have a genetic predisposition towards, insert disorder. We're going to eliminate that. While we're at it, we can also increase general muscle mass, and the immune system we can boost. And the parents are going to be like, okay, you do that over a couple of generations, and they're going to say, okay, would you like your baby to be 6 foot tall, or what height would you standard package? 6 foot tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin. They're going to be genetically engineering people, man. China's already doing it. Anyway, smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. We're going to have that members-only call-in show over at rumble.com/Timcast IRL. So head over there, sign up for Rumble Premium using promo code TIM10 if you'd like to hang out. And if you want to call in yourself, go to timcast.com and join our Discord server. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. George, you want to shout anything out?
It's been an incredible pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me. If you want to check out my book, Deep State Target, How I Got Caught in the Crosshairs of a Plot to Bring Down President Trump, kind of understand what Trump was talking about, them spying on his campaign. It kind of covers all that, and it's just been a real pleasure.
Right on.
Go subscribe to Pop Culture Crisis. We go live every Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and you can send me validation on Instagram at Mary Archived. You can also send me hate on X. That is also Mary Archived.
Good call. I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. Our new record dropped on January 31st. It's called Anti-Fragile. You can listen to it on YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, Pandora, Deezer. Don't forget, the left lane is for crime.
We will see you all over at rumble.com. Sorry, rumble.com/Timcast IRL. I was about to say timcast.com. We haven't done that in a long time. Rumble.com/Timcast IRL in about 30 seconds. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you there.